Do you regard black magic as being purely fictitious, or is there some truth in it?
Some truth. 100% truth. There is nothing fictitious about black magic, in any way whatever. It is a fact. It is a fact which has existed for several thousand years. I mean, when we talk about black magic, we are talking about Satanism, necromancy, alchemy, witchcraft, the worship of Satan.
Okay, welcome back people. This video is going to be a continuation to the Saturn Time Cube video, and in this part we are going to take a look more into the history of Saturn, the symbolism behind CERN, and the Gotthard tunnel. So let's get straight into this. There's a lot of information to cover as per usual. I'll be drawing a lot from this book, The Saturn Myth by David Talbot, in this episode, so definitely check that out and give it a read if you're interested. Now, in this book, David examines celestial events that shaped our early cultures, and he postulates that the universal monarch, or the great god, is in fact Saturn, and not the sun, as so many researchers have previously stated. David believes that Saturn once hung over the Earth and was the dominant planet. He then goes on to describe a cataclysmic event that he had called the Great Upheaval of Celestial Bodies. It was when Saturn, Venus, and Mars descended and aligned, resulting in more celestial events. These events resulted in a cosmic Mars mountain, eventually forming a connection to Saturn like a pathway, which is one of the concepts that we are going to discuss today. Now, whilst this celestial upheaval was taking place, Saturn and various other planetary bodies that it was aligned with went through multiple different configurations, and at one point in time they formed what looked like an eye in the sky, which David ties into the all-seeing eye. This heavenly configuration was typically characterized with an 8-pointed star or an 8-spoke wheel. We've spoken about 8-pointed stars before and its relation to the Tower of Babel, but now we're going to be going a little deeper. Here is a fantastic quote from a website that I found talking about this stuff. The crescent under Saturn was morphed and anthropomorphized. The Saturn crescent was morphed into wings, with the solar disk placed in the center, such as with the Egyptian winged Kefra and the Assyrian winged Ashur, or the 8-spoked wheel of Shamash. Talbot explained that the sun god of the archaic day was Shamash, Sol, or Ra, and Helios, which were identified as Saturn. Now, this image here is a picture of the boat of Ra, or the Saturn ship, and it looks similar to traditional depictions of wormholes. And as Talbot points out in his book, The Saturn Myth, the winged disc symbol was often positioned on top of the cosmic tree, which represented the cosmic mountain, or it was typically placed beside the ship. Now, Ra, or Saturn, was perpetually resurrected in the form of a scarab beetle. There's a great chapter on this in Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. There's another great book. He sailed on primordial waters and was resurrected in a continuous cycle of death and rebirth. This idea of Saturn's resurrection could also be associated with the wormholes. Here you can see the Saturn crescent is represented by the headdress upon the outstretched wings of the goddess. The crescent was also represented by the Egyptian winged phoenix, as you can see here, which the eagle on the dollar bill was inspired by. Now I have a passage here from Tracy Twyman, and this is her opinion on what the Saturn ship was. If you're not sure who Tracy Twyman was, I implore you to do some research into her, as she unfortunately lost her life for her work, and she definitely deserves all the exposure. I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't really want to talk about Tracy that much because it's a very sensitive topic. So this was her thoughts on the Saturn ship. The Saturn ship can be thought of as a travelling vessel. The person places theirself within the circle, and then they can travel to unseen realms. The world around them is transformed, but they retain their own little bit of their home reality within this circle. In this sense, it's similar to the magic carpet. This, I believe, is what Noah's Ark, or Ship of Saturn, was. It was a hermetically sealed vessel that allowed passengers to be raised up to a higher dimension, so that while the world transformed around them, they stayed safe within. When they exited the Ark, they were in a whole new world. Okay, so now let's take a look at the Black Sun. This is a very well-known occult and esoteric symbol that we've discussed at length on this channel. I have an entire video talking about the links between the Black Sun and the Nazi Party. Most people are probably aware of the Black Sun because there is a mosaic of it incorporated into the floor of the Wewelsburg Castle in Germany. And as I have previously stated, the Black Sun is associated with Saturn. Now, Saturn is referred to as the Black Star in old Judaic beliefs, and in various astronomical texts, astrologers called Saturn the Sun. In the documentary series Discourses on Alien Sky, Talbot associates the swastika symbol with their aforementioned alignment of Saturn, Venus and Mars. These planets went through various configurations, as I previously stated, and in a phase of intense discharging of light streaming from Venus, it took on a spinning swastika fashion. Now clearly the Black Sun symbol is directly related to the 8-spoke wheel, and on that, researcher William Henry stated, "The Mayans say that out of a celestial alignment comes a serpent rope with Quetzalcoatl riding upon it, and a blessed substance the Mayans called Itz, or ITZ, apparently spewing from it. In Mayan belief, a serpent rope emerges from the center of the galaxy, symbolized by an 8-spoke wheel. Cosmic sap oozes from this world tree, or cosmic cross. Though perhaps even more intriguing is the picture that developed when Mayan scholar John Mayer Jenkins replaced the Mayan term serpent rope with the appropriate modern word wormhole. I find it highly interesting that this wormhole he is emerging from is an 8-rayed symbol, which was supposed to represent the galaxy. That 8-rayed symbol also matches the 8-rayed or 8-spoked Large Hadron Collider at CERN. This is an image here of the Mayan calendar, and as you can see, I have clearly highlighted the 8 individual points on the star. And you can see in the middle you have the entity emerging, namely Quetzalcoatl in the case of the Mayans. And this is the Large Hadron Collider from CERN. And as you can see, William Henry was drawing the correlation between the two, and I'm sure you can see the similarities here for yourself. Okay, so CERN, the European Council for Nuclear Research. I'm going to put a few pictures on the screen of some general information of what they are about, but for the most part they are a group of physicists and engineers that use the world's largest and most complex scientific instruments to study the basic constituents of matter, or the fundamental particles if you will. Essentially they are looking to recreate the conditions of the universe after the Big Bang Theory as a possible means of testing this theory. The CERN facility is basically a giant particle accelerator housed in a 20-mile long circular tunnel bored into the side of a Swiss mountain. So yeah, it took some effort to make for sure. Primarily their research is focused on looking for the Higgs boson, aka the God particle, because it is tied in directly with the inception of the universe insofar as the Big Bang is concerned. Now, what I and others believe this story to be about the Higgs boson, and that is just a crock of shit. And that particle accelerator's true purpose is to attempt to access an interdimensional doorway or portal. And this idea can be seen in their iconography, along with many esoteric connections that have already been made by a lot of researchers. And it's clearly where the idea of the Mayan celestial calendar ties in. The director of CERN himself even said the Large Hadron Collider at CERN could open a door to an extra dimension, and out of this door might come something, or we might send something through. So yeah, they definitely sound like they're totally in control over there. Now, the name CERN is an abbreviation for Cernunnos, the god of the underworld, who is mythologically very similar to Osiris and Enki, all of which we know are related to Saturn. CERN also have a Shiva statue outside of the Large Hadron Collider that symbolises the cosmic dance of creation and destruction, and CERN have performed a so-called dance of destruction in a video that you can find on YouTube. I had a screenshot from it in my last video. Again, Shiva and Saturn are one in the same archetype, and that is why you often see them depicted with small children. And if you are familiar with Alice A. Bailey, she was a very famous occultist who spent, I don't know, a certain amount of time meditating in the Tibetan mountains and channeling an ascended master. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I read the book when I was younger. I'll put the link in the description. It's interesting stuff. So yeah, Alice A. Bailey, she pretty much says that Saturn, Jehovah and Shiva are all one. And we have addressed this idea before on this channel of how different deities can represent the same archetype. Now, CERN's particle accelerator is basically one ginormous electromagnetic machine. And they say that all magnets on a Large Hadron Collider are electromagnets, which are 100,000 times more powerful than Earth's magnetic shielding. Now, electromagnetism is said to be the discharge of creative forces and the unification of the electric and magnetic forces. It was said to be the secret behind the productivity of nature. Fire was said to be hidden in magnetism, whose symbols seem to have been incorporated into Masonic doctrine. Magnetism was fire, and electricity was water. The two elements were symbolized by equilateral triangles, with the fire pointing upwards and the water downwards. The amalgamation of these two triangles, of course, made Solomon's seal. And again, we've discussed this symbol extensively here many times. Also, the idea of two independent primal substances coming together to form a new can also be seen in many philosophers and occultists. In their ideas, such as Crowley and Blavatsky, the practice of sex magic is based on very similar principles, and you can see here the symbolism of this image. Now, obviously, CERN's logo depicts a 666, and I could talk about this number for hours, honestly, because it's just got so many different aspects to it. And I might make a video on it actually at some point on some of the 216 symbolism and predictive programming in movies. 216 and 666 go hand in hand because 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. So whenever you see the 216, know it is an ode to 666. It's also the 36 triangular number, which is to say that if you add 1 through 36, you get to 666. And 36 reduces to 9, which is just an inverted 6. So yeah, you just go in circles all day with this number. There's so much to it. This is also why Boris Johnson claimed the lockdown will end on the 21st of June. Write that date out shorthand is 21/6, remove the /216. 666, 36 triangular number, they're obsessed with it, you'll see it everywhere. I'll be very surprised if lockdown ends on the 21st, to be honest. Considering they just extended furlough till September, but yeah, I mean, I'm not here to discuss the charade of politics, it's not what this channel's about at all. But it is a charade, I'll tell you that right now. When you learn these numbers, you just see it everywhere. Like, media is just a charade, it really is. So 666 represents many different things to many people, and the geometric qualities of the two equilateral triangles form the seal of Solomon. And they also correspond to the 666, given that the sum of the interior angles of two equilateral triangles sums to 2,160, which is again just 216. Take the 0 off. 666 could therefore be seen as a numerological representation of the seal of Solomon. And we can see biblical evidence for this when we look into the chapter of Kings. And it says the weight of gold which Solomon received every year was 666 talents of gold. 666 also relates to the Saturn square, which makes up the seal of Saturn, or the seal of Solomon, and sums to 666 when calculated horizontally and vertically, being that all sides sum to 15 and 15 reduces to 6. Now, the name Solomon is nothing more than an ode to the sun, as every syllable in the name relates to the sun in one way or another. Sol is Latin for sun, Om is Hindu for sun, and On is Egyptian for sun. According to David Talbot, the sun god of the archaic day, as previously stated, was Shamash, Ra, and Sol, also identified as Saturn. Recognized the archetype of the three aspects and the Trinity, Shamash, Ra, and Sol, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Again, you see these narratives played out over time, again and again and again. We've spoken about some of Richter's games before in the Nazi video, and we broke down their flag and the corona and what that was all about. And it's been suggested before by researchers that Solomon's seal could actually be an ode to Orion, considering that in its basic form it's two interlocking triangles. The seal of Solomon can also be seen, as I have shown before, in the cylindrical seal with Ninurta, who was in the astral theological system associated with Saturn. As we already know, Saturn represents Osiris, who represented Orion for the Egyptians, so it's more than likely that there is a connection between Solomon's seal and Orion. They may even be one and the same thing. We also see the seal of Solomon on the dollar bill, and obviously when you connect the points with the Star of David, or the Star of Remphan, it spells Mason. As I mentioned in the first part of my video, many believe that the Tower of Babel is linked to this story. David Talbot associates the alignment of Saturn, Venus and Mars with the Tower of Babel and Mount Olympus. He also calls it, as previously stated, the Cosmic Mountain. And as I mentioned, during the And as I mentioned, during this celestial alignment, we see the 8-pointed star or 8-spoked wheel form in the sky, and this alignment is what many believe to be the inspiration behind them placing the all-seeing eye on the dollar. Researcher Goro Adachi discovered that CERN's Large Hadron Collider machine appears to mirror celestial bodies, and I will post the article in the description where it goes into that because it's pretty heavy shit, but I'm just going to grab a quote from it. The Orion Constellation is a pattern of stars repeated in monuments throughout the ancient world. From Egypt to Mexico, the constellation has been the center of the skies for our ancestors. But why is the Orion Constellation so important to ancient civilizations? Why are these monuments, such as pyramids of Egypt, mapped in such a way that these constructions mimic the skies? Orion, more than a constellation, is a global phenomenon. So the point here is that Orion, especially Orion's belt, has been venerated throughout history by multiple different cultures. Okay, so let's take a look at some gematria real quick in light of what we've been speaking about. Now, researchers such as Troy McLachlan, William Henry, and Anthony Patch, and many others have suggested that CERN is actually attempting to recreate the Tower of Babel. In The God Particle by Leon Lederman, he parallels CERN with the Tower of Babel. Now, the cosmic mountain, which David Talbot associates again with the Tower of Babel, was also represented by Atlas. And I'm sure you're all aware in ancient mythology, Atlas had the weight of the world on his shoulders. And lo and behold, CERN refers to this Large Hadron Collider's 8-spoke wheel as Atlas. As you can see here, CERN clearly displays the 8-pointed star or 8-spoke wheel imagery, the same symbol that was used to represent the archaic sun god Shamash of ancient times, Shamash aka Saturn. And this was because ancient Assyrian astrologers designated the sun and Saturn interchangeably. I'm going to put a French paper that has been translated in the description that will really give you an important information about the Babylonian astrological conceptions of the Sun and Saturn, and this paper is only 16 pages long, so it shouldn't take you much to read. Okay, here's the image from CERN's Alice program, which again shows this same portal symbolism under the blue arch, and that in and of itself speaks volumes when you know that there is an entire branch of Freemasonry called the Royal Arch Degrees, and we already know that they have their blue lodges. So a blue arch. I wonder what they're hinting at there. Now, in the Bible, we are told that the Tower of Babel was constructed in a place called Shinar, and this word literally means land of two rivers. So any attempt to recreate the Tower of Babel, you would think, would be done in a place with two rivers to honour the original location. How ironic that in Geneva, where CERN is, there are two large rivers that converge. Oh, and by the way, just in case I forgot to mention earlier, Israel is the only non-European country with full entry to CERN. CERN has a total of 23 member states, of course 23 being the 9th prime, but we'll get to that shortly. But really, what are the chances? Two rivers that converge happen to be in the same place? I don't know, it seems shady as shit to me. Okay, so there's clearly this recurring theme in media of interdimensional portals and space travel and 8-spoke wheels, and I've shown you many images in previous videos, but I'm going to pack them all together and show you some more now. So why are 8-spoke wheels associated with wormholes and stargates? We know that CERN have an 8-spoke wheel, and they've said that they can open doorways to other dimensions, and there are also accounts of the Mayan civilization of Quetzalcoatl emerging from an 8-spoke wheel as though it were some type of wormhole. It has been suggested that some of the 8-spoke portals that I'm showing here have been directly inspired by CERN. However, I think they were probably representing the 8-spoked Saturn Sun Shamash symbol, which many think is related to interdimensional travel in some way. Like I said, Talbot associates the cosmic tower with Mount Olympus and the Tower of Babel, and this ladder or pathway of sorts is seen attached to the 8-spoke Saturn Sun, or the Saturn ship. This symbol is repeated throughout ancient civilizations, and notice that it also looks like a keyhole. Now, before we go any further, we need to address Gotthard Tunnel. If you've never heard of it before, it is the world's longest and deepest tunnel, which took roughly about 17 years to build. And it's located in Switzerland, same place as CERN. Oh, and 9 people died during the construction of Gotthard Tunnel. Remember, the 9th prime is 23, like how there are 23 member states in CERN. Now, they had an opening ceremony for this tunnel that was an invite-only event. Many high-ranking politicians and businessmen attended this, and, well, you can imagine, to be honest. I honestly don't really need to say much about this video. I'm going to show you a few clips. Right, yeah, what the fuck, right? Like, for real, what did any of that have to do with opening a tunnel? Like, you don't even have to believe in any of these wild theories to know that something more than a tunnel opening is going on right there. It was a ritual in plain sight, and the word ceremony is in fact synonymous with ritual. So let's break this down, okay? At one point, I'm going to draw your attention to, in relation to CERN, okay? So about 40 minutes, where it appears the invocation has been completed, we see this goat man appear. And we're all familiar with how popular the goat is in the occult. Obvious links are to Eliphas Levi's Baphomet that the Templars apparently worshipped. And also in pagan mythology, Pan is represented in such a way. And Pan was venerated by Crowley. At his funeral, they actually recited one of his poems called Hymn to Pan, which was one of Crowley's better poems, should I say, because God, that man wrote some shit poem. Now remember, I mentioned earlier that CERN is short for the deity Cernunnos. Well, let's have a look what your boy looks like. I mean, bruh. Yeah, there's so much to this ceremony. I could talk about it for a while, but we would be here for hours. There's 2 more things I wanted to draw your attention to within the scope of the Saturn time cube theory. And that is the fact that there is a pupil in the background at this point when they're doing their performance art, which reminds me of the Eye of Saturn, which sits on Saturn's southern pole, and which was actually the inspiration for the allegory behind Lord of the Rings, given that, of course, Sauron was just Saturn. Notice in the end they put the clock up and time starts spinning out of control to imply that they're in fact fucking with time, like we've all known. Mandela effect, like I said in the last video. The world is just, like I said in the last video, this world could just be one big fucking time loop being kept in place by a satellite system maintained in the rings of Saturn. I mean, they're clearly alluding to the fact that time is changing with this image, and it fits perfectly with the narrative we've been talking about. Now, Gotthard is 169 kilometers long, and what a surprise, because Cosmic Mountain sums to 169. Coincidence? I really don't know. So maybe this is their form of the Saturn ship, connected to CERN. Remember their symbol? The mountain connects to the 8-spoke wheel, which gives us our Cosmic Mountain, or Tower of Babel, or Saturn ship. Think about it, the tunnel is the mountain, and CERN's LHC, or Large Hadron Collider, is the 8-spoke wheel that sits atop of it. It may seem like a reach, but honestly it makes perfect sense given the symbols we have discovered. Before I shut this off, let's do some more gematria. Let's check the hits on this. Part 3 will be out much sooner. Sorry for the delay, like I said, I have been at uni, masters and all that, but part 3 out much sooner.